Dear students, good morning. This is the class for CP2 for April the 15th, 2020. I hope you had a nice Easter and spring break. So last week we started part C of your pragmatics book. And this part, pay attention to how to do this part, how to prepare this part, okay? I told you that there are some, it starts over here. We started with this one, exploration. I told you that there are some texts that are highlighted in pink and some that are highlighted in green. Well, we're going to do the ones that are highlighted in pink together. So we'll read through them, we'll try to analyze them, and each text, each section focuses on one type of analysis, the analysis of one aspect. But when you are going to come to your exam, I'm going to ask you to analyze these texts in general based on what you've studied. You can find all the texts that you're supposed to study in a separate section of your Moodle. And I update that after each class or two, so you'll find several Word documents there with all the text that you're going to analyze. So what did we do last week? We looked at this first one that focused the analysis on making an assumption of the reader's background knowledge. And it was about quarterbacking as an imperfect art. Okay, we analyzed this text about a football player, and we saw that it is specific. It's highly understandable only by the U.S. discourse community of football fans. Okay, because it had lots of specific vocabulary. And you see that there are a couple of questions after each text. They guide you through the analysis. It's not that I want you to answer them, but they can give you some guidance, let's say. But again, I'll ask you to analyze the text based on all the things that you've studied. Then, okay, first text, 1C, highlighted in green. This means that you are going to analyze it. And it's about a cookery class, unbaked chocolate cake. So there's a recipe, well, actually, yes, a recipe, but it's from BBC Two, Delia's How to Cook. That is a guide to all things chocolate. And we saw that one of the first things that we can notice is that it requires very little knowledge of the art of cooking, so everybody can understand it. Okay, and then you can analyze, I don't know, dixis or cohesion, lexical cohesion, grammatical cohesion, and all the things that we've studied during the first part of the course. Okay, so you'll find this text labeled as text number 1 in your Moodle. And there were some examples, some questions that can help you analyze it. Then we looked at this second text. We did this one together. Actually, I did it, about the Nobel Prize. And this one, as you can see here, where there was a breakdown in communication about what happened to the Nobel Prize. Then I gave you text number 2, Elizabeth and Darcy declare their love, okay, from Austen's Pride and Prejudice. And so you'll find the text. Okay, there was a reflection on interpersonal context, so there are some, the text suggests some questions that you can answer, but again, general analysis. And then we did investigating co-text, cohesion, shark takes leg together. Okay, was newspaper article. And for this one, we analyzed anaphoric reference and synonyms and their role in the text. And that's where we stopped last week. So as for today's part, we start off with something that you are going to prepare, text Text 3 about Brad Pitt. That is from Rebecca Splint, All Movie Guide to Brad Pitt's Career. You will notice that this text has a very journalistic flavor. Okay, they're usually not more than a page. Okay, and the text suggests to focus on grammatical cohesion, but you'll do a general analysis. Now, text 4, and we'll analyze this one together. Grammar stammers. From Richard Lederer's Anguished English, 1987, we're going to look at some cases of ambiguous grammar retrieved from some US newspapers. Okay, I'll read them for you, and then I'll give you some seconds to read them on your own. During the summer, my sister and I milked the cows. But now that the school has started, my father milks the cows in the morning and us at night. Mrs. McAllister watched as the giant airplane taxied out of the gate. Then, like some wild beast, she pointed her nose down the runway and screamed terrifically into the sky. Mr. Yoshiko said that the donkey owners should clearly state why they want to keep the animals. If they cannot give good reasons why they need the donkeys, then they will be shot. And then, please place your garbage in this barrel. It will be here weekends for use. Recent visitors were Jonathan Goldens and their in-laws, the Brett Packards, from Lake Placid, New York. Brett had his tonsils removed in Centerville. It was a pleasant surprise to have them for supper. Almost needless to say, the ambiguity in the first case is given by this part of the section, and us at night. Something similar can be said for this one, number 2. Then, like some wild beast, she pointed her nose down. Okay? The ambiguity is given by this she. Okay? It's definitely not Mr. and Mrs. McAllister that points her nose down. Or in this case, they will be shot. Ambiguity. Who are they going to shoot? The animals or their owners? Okay, that's what ambiguity creates. Place your garbage in the barrel. It will be here weekends for use. Okay, is it referring to the barrel or to the garbage? And then this last one about having the family or the tonsils for supper. So as you can see, grammatical cohesion can create some ambiguity that, in this case, causes laughter, of course, but in other cases can lead to something more serious. Okay, we'll skip this part. Now, section C3, about exploring speech acts. The analysis of these texts is more focused on the fact that social differences can influence the way in which we speak. And as you can see here, it starts off with a text that is highlighted in green, text number 4, about Winnie the Pooh. In this case, in this episode, Eerie loses his tail, and Pooh finds one. And Pooh offers himself to help Eerie find his tail by consulting the highly educated owl. So you're going to read a dialogue between Pooh and the owl, and you're going to notice some difference in how they use language or registers and what type of speech acts they do. Okay, as you can see, there are no questions here because what you have to analyze is quite self-evident. Okay, so you can go to your Moodle and read these when you have time, when you want to prepare them for your exam. And now, text for me, understanding the multicultural dimension, in a study by Royal Philips Electronics. This excerpt is on how to do business with companies from other countries. Understanding the multicultural dimension. Dutch engineer and social scientist Geert Hofstede has conducted extensive research into the problems of doing business across many cultures. After a comprehensive study of 80,000 IBM employees in 66 countries, he established 4 dimensions of national culture. These help managers identify areas in which they may encounter cultural difficulties. Uncertainty avoidance. This dimension refers to how comfortable people feel towards uncertainty. Cultures that ranked low, like Great Britain, feel more comfortable with the unknown. Cultures high on uncertainty avoidance, like Greece, prefer formal rules. Power distance. This is defined as the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions and organizations accept that power is distributed unequally. In other words, people in high power distance cultures, like the Philippines, are much more comfortable with a slightest status differential than low power distance cultures, like Sweden. Masculinity, femininity. This refers to expected gender roles in a culture. Masculine cultures, like Japan, tend to have distinct roles for males and females, while feminine cultures, like the Netherlands, have a greater ambiguity in what is expected of the genders. individualism, collectivism. This is defined by the extent to which an individual's behavior is influenced and defined by others. Individual cultures, like the USA, prefer self-sufficiency, while collectivist Indonesia recognize the obligations to the group. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay, so you can see that certainly they are talking about some stereotypes, but they are consolidated. There are very strong stereotypes that are used in business. Okay, remember that this is an excerpt from where is it? Royal Philips Electronics. Okay, so when you look at these rules, these are the rules that are that should be taken into consideration when you are using direct or indirect speech acts, okay? And so my question for you is it possible to make such blank statements about cultural differences? And what are the difficulties that might arise if business people use these stereotypes as scientifically proven for all occasions? Okay, what would happen to business if people thought and explained things always in terms of power difference or masculinity and femininity or individualism? Sorry, I keep interrupting it. Okay, and then it gives other exercises that we can just skip and move on to something else. Okay. Section C4 about the analysis of conversation. Okay, let's see what we have here. The first text, this is text 5, I suppose. 5 for you. Let me just double check. Yes. Tamara's photos from the fancy dress. Okay. So this is a conversation, a tea break chat among 3 Australian ladies. Okay, and so you're going to see that there is some Australian vocabulary that is specified with an asterisk, and you can see the explanation over here. Since this is a dialogue, what you could analyze is the features of turn taking. Okay, remember when we talked about overlapping and interruptions and the amount of seconds that people wait before somebody else talks. And so maybe you can tell me something about conversational analysis and what we did during that section of the text. Okay. And straight away, text number 6, the full Monty. Old movie from 1997, 6 unemployed men prepare a strip show because they want to solve their economic problems. And so Gaz, one of the characters, is with his 10-year-old son at the post office. And they want to withdraw $100 that they need to give to the owner of the club. So as you can see here, again, short conversation. This one is actually split in 2 parts. And so one of the activities that your text proposes is to look at adjacency pairs, okay, and sequences. How sequences or adjacency pairs are used within the text, or if they actually are used in the text. And also you could analyze the text from the point of view of turn-taking, okay, so what is the effect that turn-taking has in this excerpt. Plus, the text also suggests to look at this excerpt from the point of view of interactional sociolinguistics. So perhaps, I don't know, you could look at the relationship between people, the roles, the status, the power, what is the background knowledge that they have in common. And also look at the location where the exchange takes place. As you can see, the text gives you lots of exercises. Just go through them. To see if you can find anything that is interesting for your analysis, your personal analysis of the text. Otherwise, you can just skip it. And now, C5, this section is going to work on cooperative principles. And as you can see, this one is highlighted in pink, so it's something that we'll do here in class about Peter Pan program. Mike Travis spends his life hitting things of various shapes and sizes. When he is not hitting things, he lives in the country with 2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 goats, 21 ducks, 5 geese, 6 pigs, and 8 hens, but not all in the same house. The smell would be minging. And that's a Scottish English meaning smelly. He loves playing for the Lyceum Christmas shows. Peter Pan is his 12th because he gets to make up funny sounds for people, like scratching, creeping, fighting, getting kicked in the bum, and getting their noses tweaked. Mike really likes small children, but he could not eat a whole one. Okay, so what we can do here is look at this text in terms of respecting maxims, floating them, or violating them. So what is going on here, perhaps? You can look at this sentence over here. Mike really likes small children, but he couldn't eat a whole one. So he plays on the ambiguity of the word likes. He likes small children, but he couldn't eat a whole one. Obviously here, he is breaching, he is violating or floating, depending on listener, he is floating the maxim of truth. Okay, and it depends on the audience. If the audience thinks that Mike could really eat a child, in that case, he is violating the maxim. Or, in the case the writer thinks that the audience will understand his pun, in that case, there is the floating of the maxim itself. Okay. So there's a violation or floating of the maximum quality depending on the audience. And of course there, as you can see, it's trying to be a comic, a funny text. So that contributes to the whole ecosystem of the text, let's say. Okay, so this one is text 7 for you on the same topic. An interview to a comedian. Okay, his last name is Parkinson. And so in this case, one of the things that you can analyze is floating of maxims. Okay, and so you are asked to highlight, to find the floating of maxims and how these create humor within the text. Now, C6.1, applying politeness. This one is about mobile phone and text messages. So somebody sends a message, a text message to Joanne, and but she doesn't know who sent the first message. And so you can read through this text, and it's clearly a mobile phone text message exchange. And perhaps one of the things that you can analyze is whether there is a usage of negative politeness or positive politeness. And what are the similarities and differences between this sort of text message and just casual conversation between two people? Okay, so you can analyze some of the features of text messaging. And then in pink, rejections. So this is a typical email that an editor, a journal editor, would send to an author to reject his or her paper. So let's read through it. Dear author, Thank you for your paper entitled, put the title, Submitted to Our Journal. I read your paper with interest. It is well and clearly written and argued. The data was interesting, and you obviously know what you are writing about. I must therefore admit that I hesitated a long time, whether or not our journal would be the best forum for this paper, and I finally decided to recommend you to submit it elsewhere. This had little to do with quality, but rather with the fact that its topic is not squarely within the scope of our new journal. With the scope our new journal would like to establish in the field. I am sorry, I must recommend you to submit elsewhere, because it is an interesting and good paper, and I hope you'll be back with a paper that is a bit more within the scope of our journal. The scope of our journal. Best wishes, and the name of the editor. For the second case, dear, the name of the author. The name and I have now had an opportunity to share our reactions to your submission to our journal. I am sorry to say that we think it doesn't reach the journal's threshold for publication, so we have to decline it. I am sorry to have to pass on this disappointing news, but the name and I hope the comments may be of some value to you if you decide to revise the paper and submit it to another journal. Best wishes, and 2 names. So as you can see, both texts, the first one that we read and this one, have a very difficult task. They have to do a face-threatening act. And, you know, it's tough for an author that has devoted so much time to a paper to see it rejected. Because usually rejection does not even occur in a couple of days. It can take weeks. And so it's all time that you waste waiting for that rejection and then eventually getting that being rejected. So that's why it's a very face-threatening act. But at the same time, these 2 papers, these 2 emails, rejecting emails, use different politeness strategies. Different strategies and different speech acts to do this face-threatening act. What is being done here, is clearly that you are doing something using a politeness strategy. First thing over here, I read your paper with interest. It is well and clearly written and argued. The data was interesting, and you obviously know what you are writing about. Okay? Clearly, positive face. I'm respecting this person's positive face. And this is connected to this line over here. This had, the fact that they are rejecting him, had little to do with quality, but that the fact that its topic is not squarely within the scope of our new journal. Okay? So the problem isn't the paper. The problem is the journal. That's why I'm using positive face. Okay, so I use positive face to say that it has nothing to do with the paper. The problem is the journal. And again, remember that other maxim that says that you maximize the praise of the other person and you also maximize the dispraise of yourself. Okay? So there's nothing negative about the paper in this first case. Look at what happens over here. Definitely more straight to the point, right? I'm using bold language and saying plainly, I'm sorry to say that we think it doesn't reach the journal's threshold. Okay? It's not even that, they don't even say that it's not within the scope of the journal. They just say that it doesn't reach the level they were expecting. So that's even worse. Okay, and they recommend to revise the paper and submit it to another journal, not even to themselves again, to somebody else. Okay, it's not that, let's say that the content, the ultimate result is the same, both for this one, for this first text, this first email, and also for this. But the face-threatening act of rejection is done differently. And perhaps this is definitely less harsh than this rejection. Okay? So it's all about the strategies that you use. Okay. So that's the end of section C. Now, for those of you who have their book, we're going to go through the extension section of it, but we're going to skip some readings. For those who don't, you can just follow from here. The extension section basically is made up of several papers that look at some topics a little more deeply. And one that we're going to look at is about conversation and race. And so this paper from 1982 analyzes some discourse strategies and miscommunications that can occur within between members of two different social groups. So what happens, what type of miscommunication can occur between two different social groups? And so there's this case about a graduate student who has to interview a black housewife. But rather than just summarizing it, I'll read it from here. The graduate student has been sent to interview a black housewife in a low-income inner-city neighborhood. The contact has been made over the phone by someone in the office. The student arrives, rings the bell, and is met by the husband, who opens the door, smiles, and steps towards him. And so the husband says, "So you're going to check out my old lady, huh?" And the interviewer, "No, I only came to get some information. They called from the office." And so the husband drops his smile and disappears without a word and calls his wife. So what happened here? Probably he went on with his interview and got the information he needed, but the interview did not have full success because the black student ignored or did not recognize some of the formulae that are used in the community. Okay, when the husband says, "So you're going to check out my old lady," he was supposed to, interact at that same level, using the same register and being kind and funny and not serious, let's say. But the interviewer does not get that. And so he says, "No, I only came to get some information." Okay? He didn't get that "check out my old lady" joke. He did not respect the formulae that are used in that community. And he replies with standard English. And that standard English that he uses within that black community creates a wall between the interviewer and the interviewee family. Okay? He builds a wall made up of us versus them. Okay? First thing, for instance, with let's say that you want to interview people because you are a linguist and you are recording, you are analyzing our local dialects, okay? And you're interviewing people who are 70, 80 years old, even 90 years old. What are you going to do? Do you use standard Italian? Definitely not. You usually use somebody who is local, okay? So the interviewees know everything about your family, and you're not going to use dialect, and you're not going to use Italian, sorry. You have to use their dialect. You have to put these people at ease. But if you don't recognize these formulae and you don't use them, you're never going to have the success that you need for your research. Okay. We'll skip this one. If you're interested in it, you can read the paper, but we'll skip this part. And I want to go down to the reading in politeness, okay, about women and indirectness. This is a study by Deborah Tannen, 1994, about gender and discourse. Remember what we said about being defensive. Why do we use this defensiveness when we are talking? Usually speakers want to defend themselves by not going on record. Okay? You always try to find a strategy. Well, you tend to use a strategy. Because going on record can create some situations of some face-threatening situations. remember that using indirect language indicates a certain amount of power. Probably we've all experienced this. Remember when you were younger? It still happened. It could also happen at our age or your age anyway. If Dad says something like, if you want, you can go. I don't know, be it a party or going out at night, whatever. And you knew that your dad did not agree. He said, if you want, you can go. His words did not oblige you to stay at home. However, this person is so powerful that he does not need to oblige. You get that sense of guilt that forces you to stay at home. But your dad said, if you want, you can go. So the more power a person has, the less direct he or she needs to be. With that said, let's go to Tanin's paper. Remember what we all said about indirect speech acts, okay? Look at this technique, look at this strategy. So there's Mary and Peter. They live together, and Mary just broke her hairdryer. Mary does not want to do a direct speech act and say, hey Peter, can you help me with this? Can you repair my hairdryer? What does she do? She leaves a piece of her hairdryer around, and she waits for Peter to understand. No words at all, no direct request. On the other end, what will this cause? Two options. Peter will either fix the hairdryer or not. This is what will happen from a practical point of view. But what happens at a linguistic point of view, a language point of view? If Peter fixes the hairdryer, he does it on his own. It's his initiative. Mary didn't say he had to fix it. He fixed it. But let's say that he's a little distracted and does not want to fix the hairdryer, whatever. If he does not fix the hairdryer, it can be because she didn't say that she wanted him to fix the hairdryer. She did not inform him. Okay, so that's what happens with indirect speech. There's a tendency for women to use, according to the stats, to use indirect speech. But watch out for all this non-verbal language going around. Maybe you can tell me something about your experience with that. And now, this other paper about complement responses by Nielsen. So this paper is about a study between Syrian and American compliment responses. How Syrians and Americans respond to compliments. And so the responses to compliments were divided into 3 groups: acceptances, mitigation, and rejection. The result is that both populations, Syrians and Americans, either accept or mitigate compliments. They rarely reject compliments. Okay. And there are some differences between the 2 populations. For instance, Syrians use accept a compliment plus a formula, and we'll see what that means in a while. But this is not used in the United States. Okay, just to show you some cases. So how do you accept a compliment? Well, you just say an appreciation token, like thanks. You can agree, well, I think so too. You can return the compliment, like yours are nice too. Or accept with a formula. Okay? And you can see the stats over here. Or you can mitigate. What does this mean? You can use a qualifying comment. For instance, I like your shirt. Oh yes, I bought it at Macy's, whatever. Or this person can mitigate the compliment by using a repetition request or asking for reassurance. Oh really, do you like it? And that usually happens in the United States. Something that rarely happens, at least for the American and Syrian cultures, is disagreeing. So, oh, how beautiful you are. Oh, no, I'm not. And that happens rarely. Or it could happen that the person totally ignores the compliment and so gives no response. Okay, these are some examples. So I'll just skip them because they are the ones that we just looked at. Remember that, of course, rejections are damaging to relationship building. Okay, how do you feel if you say to somebody, oh, you look beautiful today, and that person says, oh no, I'm fat? Okay, that is definitely damaging because you want to create a relationship. You want to create a bond with that other person, and that person totally puts you off, saying that, no, you're saying something that is totally wrong. What happens with the Syrian population? There is usually for agreements are usually less frequent than in the US data, and they were all from male subjects. Okay, in the case here, truly your design points to your experience and your exquisite taste. And the male replies, all my designs are successful. Or I'm now the best one in the club. Okay? Perhaps in Syria, agreeing or emphasizing a compliment might not be seen as a mistake from a cultural point of view. Something that is more typical of the Syrian corpus is compliment returning. For instance, you are dynamic and your work is well done, and you are straightforward in your work. There is no need for anyone to go over what you do. You are smart and honest and amiable. And the person replies, thank you, and you are the same. This creates a bond, not rejecting a compliment. Something typical of the Syrian corpus is the agreement plus formula. Let's look at some of the most used. By God, Abu Muhammad, father of Muhammad, you are always successful in your trade. And the person replies, I swear by God, success comes from God. This success comes from God's satisfaction and my parents' satisfaction with me. And after all, my friend, he who works hard will have a share of success. I swear by God, this is true. May God raise your stature more and more. Or another case, your face is shining today. Ayman, this is perhaps because you are relaxed today, so you look beautiful. And the person replies, may your days be beautiful. This is perhaps the light of faith. Okay, so all these several formulae. Mitigating responses. Example could be, but you look very beautiful today. And the person replies, no, not to this extent. This is despite the fact I'm tired today. It's not totally rejection, but mitigation. This means that you reach the aim of avoiding self-praise, but do not disagree with the speaker. So you still have that bond, but not too much. Or, less used than in the United States, you can mitigate by reassurance. Oops, sorry. Like, wow, what a beautiful suit. You have good taste suddenly. And the person replies, why? Do you like it? Rejection, last part, was not used in the Syrian group. Okay, probably I would go over this this part again, looking at the tables with all the stats, but there are some limitations to this study, definitely, and we have to consider the context, the social context of the respondents. The Syrians were a middle class from the urban area. The Americans were Caucasians from Caucasian university students. So that influences also the way in which people respond to compliments, for sure. The similarity, however, between the two groups is that they either accept or mitigate, and the responses are quite similar. The responses were not dependent on, did not depend on the gender, because both males and females use the same type of responses. Although there were no agreeing utterances used by the Syrian females. Okay, the important thing is that there is no rejection. Plus, remember that for the Syrian population, their responses were rich in formulae. A typical one is, "It is presented to you, madame." When somebody says, I don't know, "I like your shirt, it is presented to you, madame." I think that this is just a polite ritualistic expression. It's not that they would offer you the object that you are talking about. And another difference that you can look at is that the Syrian compliments are definitely longer. It's more part of a ritual, okay, in the use of language. So that one was pretty long. Remember a couple of things. Number one, now I will copy and paste all the green texts, the one that you are supposed to analyze on your own, and put them in the Moodle box, in the Moodle. For that. Then if you have any questions about it, remember that I told you, yes, the text gives you some questions that you can focus on, but I'm not really interested in the questions. I'm interested in a general analysis of the texts based on what you've studied within this first book. Next week, we'll start the semantics book. And you're warned, it's more difficult than this one. But we'll get through it. We'll manage to get through it. It's not a problem. So the song for today is by Bon Jovi, "It's My Life." This ain't a song for the broken-hearted, no silent prayer for the faith departed. I ain't gonna be a face, just a face in the crowd. You're gonna hear my voice when I shout it out loud. It's my life, it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just want to live while I'm alive. It's my life. My heart is an open highway, like Frankie, espero sappiate di sia, said, I did it my way. I just want to live while I'm alive. It's my life. This is for the ones who stood their ground. For Tommy and Gina, who never backed down. Tomorrow's getting harder, make no mistakes. Luck ain't even lucky. Got to make your own breaks. It's my life, and it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just want to live while I'm alive. It's my life. My heart is like an open highway. Like Frankie said, I did it my way. I just want to live while I'm alive, 'cause it's my life. Better stand tall when they're calling you out. Don't bend, don't break, baby. Don't back down. And then it repeats. Okay, let me put the link over here. Okay. So thank you very much, and see you next Monday. Take care. Have a nice week. Bye.